This is big. This is a big night. Let's hope I don't lose my voice because, alas, I'm out of cough drops. So today, sorry, I had to take a shower. There's no Natalie Morales around here, no Nancy Grace having coiffed hair with jewelry on. No, there's just a 47-something-year-old mama who just made her 9-year-old autistic child get in the shower with her so we could both be clean for tomorrow and not be late for this video, which requires robes. FYI. So today was the last day of the trial. Now, before you all go crazy, it's not the last day. It is the last day that we will hear evidence in the trial. Tomorrow, the jury will take a field trip to Moselle where they will look around. Poot, that's Harpootlian, argued that they should be able to go. And I'm glad that they're going to. I mean, I think that's kind of important. They're going to go tomorrow morning, and then they're going to come back, and it will be final arguments. Now, Poot, he's for the defense, and then we got Creighton for the offense. So Poot wants to have two people give the argument at the end. Well, the Judge Newman was like, no, I'm really not into that. So anyway, so the day started off. This, I will have to say, if you have not watched today, this morning was high drama. Poot, Harpootlian, hi, we are all sick of the Murdaughs. Well, you're a part of history right now. You are watching the trial of the century, and you must commit. We are committed now to finishing this out. I'm committed. I have put all this time in. I'm here. It will be over soon, I promise you. Then we'll be back to just normal, everyday, annoying life. Why doesn't Food Lion have Mott's applesauce anymore? That kind of life. But today, we're talking about the Murdaugh trial. So we got Harpootlian for the defense. He starts off the day pissed because he says the offense wants to bring in 7 rebuttal witnesses. Well, Poot starts off, 7 reply witnesses. It was 2, now 4, now 7. The state's position seems to be to let no dead horse go unbeaten. This has to stop. And Judge Newman is like, yeah, no. Actually, we're going to talk about it. Now, I watched the Netflix special. I just want some credit for the fact that I spent, 3 hours watching another series. This is why, people eat Fruit Loops in my house, because we are committed to this. And the biggest thing I got from the Netflix special was that Alec, I don't know why his name is Alec. It is spelled Alex. I don't know. I don't know why Buster goes by Bus. Paul goes by Paul. Somebody goes by Ro. I don't know. I don't understand these things. I'm just telling you. I do know that the brothers don't have the same accent, which I find sort of interesting. No, I didn't know that Josh lost his son recently. Okay, so we hear a phone call. If you watch the Netflix show, you hear a phone call where Alec has called Bus and said, he's talking about how he did in like betting on football or whatever on Sunday. He said, I did pretty good. I did pretty dang good. I won 6 soups and 4 beef sticks. That's prison talk for I'm a big gambler. 6 soups and 4 beef sticks. Okay. Let's get ready. We start the day off. One of the biggest things that happened today is this discussion of Was the gunshot directly, firmly placed to the back of Paul's head, or was it not? This sounds very like I am callous. I am not. I am just repeating what is being shared. I didn't realize how important this was. At the beginning of the day, I was like, why does this matter? Like, why is it a big deal? Well, I'll tell you why it's a big deal. One, if someone was shot with a gun to the back of their head, it supports the argument that there had to be two shooters, because the person couldn't have recovered from that shot and then gone and shot Maggie. So that's one issue. The other issue is that was this whole argument that the shooter had to be basically the size of a 12-year-old, right? So that was a big, big thing today. And I'll tell you, we'll keep listening. You can decide what you think. There's also, if you had shot someone to the back of the head, the amount of brain matter, biological stuff, where would it have gone? Kelly, I like the cell phone too. Okay, so I wrote day 2. Why does it matter how the shot was fired? Okay, we get on the stand. We have Ronnie Crosby. Ronnie Crosby is a really likable dude who is a partner in Alex's former law firm. And I just thought he was great. He really cared a lot about Paul, and you can tell he and Alec had been friends, business partners for, I think he said 34 years, which is pretty significant. And they start the conversation. So this is the first reply witness that comes on for the offense. This is who Poot didn't want on. And I realized really quickly there was a reason Poot didn't want these people on. They kicked his tail. Honestly, that's what I think today. Now, Ronnie Crosby comes on, and the offense, Waters, says, now you rode around the property with Paul. Yes. Do hogs exist in the daytime? Absolutely, yes. I have shot over 500 hogs during the daytime. Now, the reason this is important is because last week we heard Alec Murdaugh say with real authority, and this is a quote, just in case there's any problem, you don't look for hogs in the daytime. You look for hog signs. Now, this is the discussion of, did you all ride around with guns that day? And Alec is saying, no, we did not. You don't look for hogs in the daytime. You look for hog signs. Ronnie Crosby was the first of 2 witnesses we had on today that said, that's bull. There are hogs in the daytime. Basically, hogs, if they are pressured to hunt at night, they will. But if they're not pressured to hunt at night, they will do it all the time. They root. That's what they do. They don't hunt. They hunt hogs. Hog hunting. My husband hog hunts. I'm familiar with this. It's very barbaric. I'm not into it. But anyway, Ronnie Crosby, he said, if you were riding around, did you have guns with you? He said Paul was fond of the 300 blackout. As a general rule, you always take a rifle with you. Crosby was angry, said Marcia. You know, I thought Crosby was angry too, but I don't think he was angry for the reason that Poot said he was angry. I think he was angry at Poot, not at Alec. That's what I think. So he said, I've killed hundreds of hogs in the daytime. They said, how about Alec and his fear of law enforcement? He says he was paranoid. He didn't trust SLED. These are all the reasons that he had to lie, right? About being at the kennels. He was very uncomfortable with SLED. What do you think, Ronnie? My observation is that Alec had a way good relationship with law enforcement. Okay. This is making sense to me, right? Like, we know, the jury doesn't know this, but we know law enforcement, he was always having them out there. He was doing all this kind of mess. So that felt a little weird to us. But now we're hearing one of his law partners. Now then, they said, I mean, Waters just, and it's Poot Poot's fault. Poot Poot was mad. 7 reply witnesses, you want to be the dead horse. Well, Waters got to the point. Waters then says, what did he tell you about when he called 911? Now, Ronnie Crosby was a partner. He was there in the first few days. I mean, he was trying to be helpful. Here's what he said. My understanding was that he checked them before he called 911. Well, I'm telling you, I've never heard the defense in 26 days use the word so much. They were kaputty. Well, then he tries to get himself back together. Well, what do you mean he's not scared of law enforcement or SLED? Did Alec tell you that the boat case had to do with the murders? No, he didn't. He said specifically he did not believe anyone on the boat had anything to do with it. And then Crosby goes into this, what Alec called was my distrust for SLED. He said, well, he had this distrust for SLED because of his son, was going to be tried for this murder. And he said, well, he didn't not trust them because of that. He just didn't like what was happening, but it's not that he didn't trust them. So let's just be clear. So Ronnie Crosby starts telling this story. Well, Poot Poot goes crazy over Bullware. Now, do you know who Bullware is? This is like a whole nother, this could be a late night Barrett Bullware. So let's just have a little timeout for a minute. Who is Poot Poot? Poot Poot is the defense. Waters is the offense. So Barrett Bullware was an Allendale City, South Carolina fisherman, a business partner of Alec Murdaugh. He died in 2018 of cancer. After he died and before he died, Alec stole from him. He was also indicted in 1983 when authorities seized 17 tons of marijuana on a fishing trawler from him. Charges were dismissed. He was never convicted because a government witness was hit by a car and killed. Afterwards, Alec buys Moselle for $5 from his widow. And they do some sort of trade of 730,000 multi-property. But you have to consider Moselle, which is 1,772 acres in Islandton, South Carolina. It's about 50 miles from Charleston. It's under contract now for almost $4 million. So there's a story here. But anyway, Ronnie Crosby is talking about when Bullware is really sick with stage 4 cancer. Ronnie is trying to help him. He's telling Alec Murdaugh. And meanwhile, Poot Poot is saying, objection, objection, hearsay, objection, roll 5, objection, objection. Make it stop. La la la, make it stop. Stop, stop. Don't let him talk anymore. Don't let him talk. Well, the judge is like, shush up, shushy. Bullware needs the money for the colon cancer. Alec says to Ronnie Crosby, that's really nice that you're helping him. Meanwhile, Alec is stealing from him. I mean, this is terrible. Ronnie Crosby says Alec tended to be a theatrical type presence in the courtroom. He could get quite theatrical. Now, we heard another law partner later say that he was sort of an emotional type anyway. So that didn't stick with me. Well, then Poot Poot, I mean, he is going crazy. What? Let me just say, you're angry at him, aren't you? How much money did he steal from you? And don't tell me you don't know. We're still counting, Mr. Harpootlian. And I don't know, because when you borrow money to pay back what somebody else has stolen, and you don't know what's been paid back so far, you don't know. But you were angry at him, weren't you? How much money has he stolen from you personally? And then Ronnie Crosby says this. You're trying to take me somewhere where you don't want to go, Pootie. You're angry at him. You're mad. I have no feeling one way or the other. I have had extreme anger, but you have to walk around and handle. You have to walk away. Poot Poot goes, oh, yeah, you're Zen. You're Nirvana. Do you think he did it? Okay, I'm not a lawyer in real life. I just play one on television. But he should not have asked Ronnie Crosby if he thought he did it. And Ronnie Crosby, for the record, said, I have no feeling one way or the other. I don't have access to all the information that you have. So he made Ronnie mad, but Ronnie wasn't mad at Alec. Ronnie was pissed at Pootie. And he said, I took an oath to tell the truth. I took an oath to tell the truth. And that to me really stood out because Alec took the same oath. And here Poot Poot is going to try to make everybody else out to be some sort of vindictive liar. And Ronnie Crosby wasn't going to have a thing. Oh, crap, I forgot to get the Amos his medicine. A thing to do with it. You're Zen, you're Nirvana. He said, I came to the scene of the murders to support my partner. I thought I knew who Alec was. I did not. I wasn't aware that he had a drug problem. I didn't say I forgave him. I said I had no feelings. I took that oath and I took it very seriously. Well, then they say again, what was your understanding about when Alec called 911 in the bodies? My understanding was he checked them and called 911. Alec told us the other day, and this was Alec's quote on the stand, before I checked them, I called 911. And if you haven't been following this, you might not understand why this is such a big deal. The other day, Alec admitted there would have been no time to have checked them and then called 911. Because when he arrived, he had 17 seconds. Well, I think Alec didn't figure that into the lie. And so now he has to say, well, I didn't check them first. I called 911 and checked them. But that night, he told multiple people, I checked them. And then I called 911. It's a real problem because he couldn't have done it. But that was the biggest problem to me. Now, then we have Dr. Ellen Reamer. Dr. Ellen Reamer, oh my God, y'all are still talking about hogs reading. Dr. Ellen Reamer was the original medical examiner. She was annoyed with Poot Poot on the stand. She kind of got all flustered, but I think she was being totally honest. I think when you have someone who's a medical examiner and they have chosen an area of medicine where they are going to look at dead bodies, it's kind of a different type. You know, you hear that about certain practices of medicine. She says a few things that I think are really key. She said it could not have been a contact shot because he would not have even had a face left, and that is Paul. She said he had no fractures in the bones of his face. Again, there is no way that a wound to the head with steel pellets wouldn't have blown his face off. Split his entire face open, is what she said. What we have here is not consistent with a contact wound. Now, at this point, Alec is crying. I don't want anybody to get convicted who is innocent. But I will say Alec was crying and sobbing and carrying on. What he didn't realize, it looked to me, was that this discussion of having a face left was going to go on all day. He literally had no tears left. Because if that made you cry, you would have cried all afternoon. He didn't cry all afternoon. Now, Dr. Reamer and Poot Poot do not get along. Poot says to her, now you said the muzzle was 3 feet away. Yes, 2 or 3 feet away. Now, the whole time they're talking about this, Alec is rubbing his head. He's rubbing the back of his head. He's rubbing the top of his head. He is rubbing his head the whole time they're talking about Paul's head. It was interesting. So you have to remember, the defense is saying the gunshot wound hit the head, goes through the head, into the shoulder, and then the pellet basically backtracks and goes up and hits the top of the door jamb. She says, that ain't never happening. No pellet ever goes down and comes back. No way, Jose, nuh-uh. What she says happened is that, and they said, oh, we had all this, flesh goes this way. She said, no, that's not it. The gun, Paul gets shot through the shoulder first. As he begins to fall, no, he gets shot somewhere. As he begins to fall, he gets shot through the shoulder, and it goes up and it exits out of his head, which would explain why the shell hit and was in the door jamb. So I would argue with somebody till the cows came home that the offense knocked it out of the park. There is no question that this was not a wound to the head. He would not have had a face. So the trouble with that is that it means it could have been one person that shot both of them. This story that they had made it so there would have to be two. And they would have to be, a little person, 5'2", right? They killed it. Then, get ready for this. Then we have Sheriff T.C. Smalls come on. Sheriff T.C. Smalls is retired. African-American, was a sheriff for 39 years, 4 kids, 7 grandchildren. He's a pastor. Do you want to argue with Sheriff Smalls? No, me no want to. Neither did Poot Poot. Sheriff Smalls, they say, I'm telling you, this is worth going back to watch. I'm not doing it justice. I'm trying, but it was good. Did Alec Murdaugh ask you, Sheriff Smalls, about installing blue lights in his car? No. I didn't know anything about it, and he never approached me. Well, just the other day, you know what we hear from Alec about the blue lights? I had them installed. and I had permission from the sheriff. Uh-oh. That's not good. Sheriff Small says, no sirree, Bobby. No. And then Griffin said Poot Poot has to take a break, and they get Griffin on. Griffin gets on and said, now, you knew Alec was a solicitor. And Small said, I thought he was an assistant solicitor. Well, I thought that was funny. Now, you had this guy who installed the lights on your car, Eddie Gibson. No, I didn't. Well, well, he worked for you. What did he do? He was a deputy sheriff, not a light installer. I used a company out of Orangeburg. I never had any knowledge he had a blue light in the vehicle. Yet Alec said, I asked the sheriff at the time, and he said it was fine. There's a reason they needed 7 rebuttal witnesses. And there's a reason that Poot Poot was going crazy. I mean, why should they get to have these witnesses? I mean, I just love. And the judge is like, because you are going to suffer. I heard today that Alec Murdaugh, now this is a rumor, that he would use the blue light to leave football games. I actually don't blame him. Have you ever been in the traffic from his football games? This is what entitled people do with blue lights. If I had a blue light, I'm pretty sure I would use it inappropriately. I don't have one. I wonder what Kmart did with all theirs when they closed up. Okay, anyway. So now we're getting into Paul McManigal. Paul McManigal is going to talk to us about Maggie's cell phone. Now, Paul spends the weekend, and Paul's kind of dorky, but very likable. And Paul is no joke. So everybody agrees that Paul McManigal is allowed to come on and talk. Paul McManigal is actually with the task force office with, what are they called? Secret Service. I mean, this is kind of serious. They said, what'd you do this weekend? He said, well, this weekend I practiced. I threw the phone. I threw the phone to see when the phone would open. I did all these things all weekend long. And you're really believing, you're thinking, Paul did do that this weekend. So he says, if a phone is thrown like a frisbee, 9 out of 10 times, it does not turn on. So when we're thinking about the phone going out of a car, landing in the forest, it doesn't turn on. And we've been wondering why. Well, according to Paul McManigal, 9 out of 10 times it did not turn on. Okay. Well, then they go crazy. They're like, were you a scientist? We want to object. He shouldn't be allowed to talk. This is Griffin's, because Poot Poot is done in, like his blood pressure is off the hook. He shouldn't be allowed to talk. Well, the judge is like, you didn't object to him being an expert witness. Well, how does he know about all these things? He's not an expert. And they're like, well, nobody said he was a scientist. Well, he didn't record the experiments. They're like, well, you said he was an expert witness on cell phones, and he just came in and talked about the cell phone. Lori thought the defense did a good job in showing he wasn't an expert witness. Well, Lori, the problem is they had already said he was an expert witness. So it's kind of like, well, you know how a lot of people like to do in our town, when you have a chance to object, you don't, and then later you're like, but I didn't like that idea and I missed the meeting. No. You missed your chance, Tootsie Pop. Next, we have Mark Ball. Now, Mark Ball is also an attorney with Alec Murdaugh. Very likable to me. He had some good law partners. Very good. Well, they just hit it out of the gate. Did Alec mistrust SLED? No. I don't think so. I thought he had a very good relationship, especially with his side gig, this is his words, as a solicitor. Very good. What helps you get in with law enforcement better than being a DA? It's pretty damn good. And you're a volunteer one. Pretty good. How long had Alec had blue lights? Well, I don't know. He's had this new Suburban about a year, but he had the blue lights in the vehicle before that one too. Sometime. So now we know that he not only had a blue light in one car, he had it in 2 cars. It's getting worse. 2 cars. And nobody gave him permission. It was very terrible. The offense. Can you hunt hogs in the daytime? Yeah. 2 weeks ago, I shot 5. They eat all the time. They root. How long have you known Alec Murdaugh? 34 years. What was Paul's weapon of choice? .300 Blackout. Bought for hog hunting. Alec talked to you about buying these guns? Yeah, he talked to me about buying the guns. I told him I'm not a big Blackout fan, but that's why people buy them. What did you talk about the night of the murders? You were with Alec. What did you talk about? As I testified, this is a quote, he told me he went to Maggie, rolled Paul over. The second time he told me, he mentioned that the phone came out and he switched it. He went to Paul and then to Maggie and then called 911. So that night, he tells Mark Ball, and this is somebody that has known him for 34 years. To me, this is really big because they know him, and we don't know him. We don't know, I don't know what Alec and Maggie's relationship was, but like Buster does. If anybody knows if Alec is guilty, it's Buster, because we have heard all these things about their relationship. Well, Buster's the only person that knows things. Anybody could say anything about my marriage, but my children, did they fight? Yeah, we physically fought all the time. No, they didn't. You can tell anybody, but somebody has to be there. Did he take the golf cart to the kennels? Well, we don't need to prove that, Robin. Alec already told you that he took the golf cart to the kennels. So that's old news. Now, he says that night he went to Maggie, who's over here, came back, rolled Paul over. The second time he says, I went to Paul, his phone popped out, and then I went to Maggie, and then I called 911. The first time he tells that story is that night, the very first night. You don't forget things like that. What difference does it make? So here's the difference that it makes, Patty. We know that there was 17 seconds from the time his car pulled up to the kennels to the time he made the 911 call. In 17 seconds, he couldn't have run over to Maggie and rolled Paul over and then gotten back to the car. These bodies were 30 feet apart, far away from the car. There was not enough time. Alec admitted this on the stand. I never said I called 911 first. I never said I checked the bodies first. I looked up, I called 911, and then I went and checked the bodies. Because he didn't know when the OnStar data came through, 17 seconds. Damn it, 17 seconds. There's no way. No way. No way. Had he ever told you he went to the kennels, Mark Ball? The first time that I heard about him going to the kennels before was last Thursday. Last Thursday. Did you know he had a drug problem? No. I didn't. I didn't know he was stealing. I didn't know. I thought I knew him well. The last time he talked to him, he got a call, Labor Day 2021. Call registered as John Martin. He answers the phone. What do you need, John? And it's Alec. They hadn't talked since then. I never heard mistrust of SLED from him. Oh, and this is where they were saying to him, what do you mean he didn't mistrust SLED? Of course he did. They were going to, get his son and for this driving this boat, and it was going to be terrible. And he said, that whole boat incident didn't make him distrust SLED. He disputed what they said and was planning a vigorous defense. There was no mistrust of SLED. If anything, we've heard the opposite, that SLED was trying to help him wrangle Connor Cook into being the driver of the darn boat. I mean, why in the devil didn't Paul get arrested for months? Never even got freaking handcuffs on him. That doesn't happen to normal people. No, siree, it does not. Do you think he's guilty? I don't know. I think I do. Do I think he'll be proven guilty? I have no idea. But today really got me. All these lies mean something. They mean something. I think he didn't do this all by himself, but that doesn't matter. So now we get Kenneth Kinsey on. Now, I like Kenneth Kinsey. He's our last person of the day. Kenneth Kinsey is the crime scene forensics expert. Dr. Kinsey is smart. Now, they want to get Dr. Kinsey. They no get him. They really didn't do a good job. So immediately, the defense comes out of the gate. Y'all have been critical. And he's like, no, we haven't been critical. We argue that the shot went through the left shoulder, the neck, and through the head. You can look at the directionality of the blood, he says. There is a pellet in the door jamb. Well, why is there only one pellet? Wouldn't there be a bunch? He said, well, there's one indentation, but if you look in this picture you're showing me, you can see where the paint on the door was disturbed. You can see the pellet indentations in the paint. Look, let's count them. And he starts counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, this is when the ums are really getting big. So, Griffin, if you're watching this, I'm sure you hate my guts. You need to go to a speech coach, and whenever you want to say you pause. It's very important. I had a speech coach before my TED Talk. It is really key. So instead of saying, you just tell me what you saw. See how that sounded more professional? He said, well, I can tell you what didn't happen. The shell didn't turn around and come back out of his head. I can tell you that much. So, again, here's the door frame. There is a shell casing in the door frame. They are arguing that he was shot here and the bullet comes down and somehow, pew, goes back up and hits the door frame. That lie being destroyed murders their case. The blood shows directionality. Force goes up. That's why there is hair on the ceiling. When you hit something, force goes up. Force goes up. I mean, it was medium directional blood splatter. Where does this come from? That's from when his brain hit the sidewalk. I mean, it was very convincing. What do you make of these pock marks on the floor? He said, I don't know, Mr. Griffin. It could be pellets or it could be from a pressure washer. He is good. So you're left with, did he lie because of paranoia and addiction to opiates? You don't feel like he did. You don't feel like he was scared of SLED. If he was so scared of SLED, why did he run around with a blue light and lie about the sheriff? He was an assistant solicitor. He had these people at his house. I mean, he was in. Was it his addiction to opiates? I don't think so. Well, nobody said Buster was there. Again, there is no way the shooter could have done that. And he says, we have Alan Wilson come on. Now, this was a big deal for people in South Carolina. Alan Wilson is the state attorney, the attorney general. So it's kind of cool that he is there. And he said, he's asking these questions. And we hear from Kenneth Kinsey, it was somebody he was real comfortable with. Paul's arms were down. Paul was not in defense mode at all. So Alec leaves, and when he leaves, he says, there was nobody there. I got out of there, is what Alec says. I got out of there. Paul's just standing there, and somebody comes up with a gun, and he doesn't even turn or run or move. No, that doesn't make sense. Sheriff Small also said, and I forgot to tell you this, that there was never a threat reported to him related to the boat accident. So when Alec says, I was so worried, we were having these threats that night, the sled gets there, I knew it was this, I knew it was the boat, we've had lots of threats. There were no threats. There were no threats. And when you're lying about that, you've set the whole thing up. You've set the whole thing up. Tomorrow, there's a field trip to Moselle. The jury will head out at 9:30. They plan to be back by 11 a.m., and then they're going to start the case. And Poot really made an argument that they need to go there because he didn't want them to be influenced by crazy paparazzi. I don't know what that means. The judge is going. He said they are not allowed to talk to anyone but him. They can ask questions. And that's what it'll be like. So big day tomorrow. Big day. Subscribers, tune in later. Whew.